Hello everybody, here we are today on the beautiful bluffs and dunes on Lake Michigan. We got some dunes up this way, Lake Michigan behind me. It's a beautiful day. We're out here to do some paragliding, which is kind of like the paramotoring that I've been doing but without an engine. But that's not what this video is about, because this won't be the first time for me flying without an engine. Unfortunately, on a couple of different occasions, I had a couple flights that my engine ended up quitting on me. So we'll roll those, I'll come back, and we'll talk about first why it really wasn't that big of a deal and what happened with them. So without further ado, let's roll the video. Oh shit. Well, looks like I'm landing out in the field. Shit. Well, that sucked. So in the intro, I mentioned that I talk about why engine failures on a paramotor are generally not considered a big deal. And the main reason is that these things take such little distance to land that you can land in a pretty small field. And then there's also what I call the first rule of paramotor flying. And the first rule of paramotor flying is you always fly as if you expect your engine to quit at any time. These engines, as my two engine outs have shown, they're not very reliable. So you kind of just expect them to quit at any time and just kind of fly that way. So you always fly with the landing spot in sight. So if your engine does quit, you just kind of glide down and land. And like I said, you don't need a lot of space to land. It's generally speaking pretty easy. So that first engine failure that you just saw was the first really warm flight of the year. I think the temperature when I would take off was around 72 or 73 degrees. And the idle was running a little bit low. It was within the specs called out by the book, so I didn't really think too much of it. What I thought it was is that it being warmer, that meant the air was less dense, which means the engine was probably running a little rich, which makes the idle a little bit low. I thought no big deal. I ended up taking off, and then when I did a little bit of a shallow spiral, the engine ended up cutting out on me, and I just wasn't able to get it started in the time I had. But once again, it was no big deal. I had the field there in sight, easy to land in, so that's what I did. So what I did is then, as soon as I launched, I went back to the car, I readjusted the carburetor to lean it out a little bit. That brought the idle up. I took off and flew again. Everything was fine. About 2 weeks later, my engine was running rough again. Found out it was too rich again, so I re-leaned it out, did some flying. 2 weeks after that, it was running too rich again, so I leaned it out. And then 2 weeks after that, it was running rich again, and when I tried to adjust it, I ended up running out of adjustment room on the mixture screw. So it was like tightened all the way to the stops, and it still wasn't lean enough. So then I realized there was something wrong with the carburetor, and that's what ultimately led to the first engine out, is the carburetor, the fuel metering was going wrong inside. So I decided to buy a new carburetor. Then installed the new carburetor, got it dialed in, or what I thought was dialed in, and then on the second flight on the new carburetor, this happened. Well, I missed the launch, but that's really not the point of this. The point of this is to get some sound tests. Probably not going to make a video out of this unless something wacky happens. Down here. Not too bad though. Oh, you gotta be shitting me. Oh shit, I gotta turn around. Oh god, this is not gonna be good. Oh boy, this is gonna be fun. Yeah, So as I said, that was the second flight on the new carburetor, and I just want to talk a little bit about how you adjust the carburetor on one of these things. So there is no accelerator pump. Sorry, I'm just going to geek out a little bit here. An accelerator pump, what it does is it stops lean excursions when you quickly go to wide open throttle. So how you tune these things is you have to tune them rich enough so they're actually too rich when you're cruising. But so when you crack the throttle open really rapidly, there's enough extra fuel there so it doesn't go too lean and kills your engine or makes your engine bog down. So how you tune the carburetor is you get it at idle, then you give it a quick throttle blip, and it should respond to life quickly and not bog down, not start to dip. It should go, you know, if you're idling, I'm gonna make some noise here, it goes wow, wow, like that, and that makes a nice snappy. If you hear it go and then come up, that means you're too lean. So you keep leaning it, then you keep blipping the throttle until you get to that point where it starts to bog down where you blip the throttle. Then you richen it back up a little bit until it's nice and snappy, and there you go, then you're done. So that's what I did. As it turns out, that made it a little too lean yet. Because on this engine, as it turns out, blipping it from idle is not the worst case. The worst case is blipping it a few, say about 500 to 1,000 RPM above idle, which is where the clutch starts to kick in, and now you get all that extra inertia of the propeller. I looked back at the video and I noticed that I was off idle for a little bit. Then when I went to go up to increase the throttle, that's when the engine died. So after watching the video, I'm like, I should be able to recreate this. So I put my engine on a rack so I could watch the tachometer, and it was nice and snappy. I could blip the throttle from idle, it worked just fine. I got it off idle, so the prop was just spinning. I blipped it, and the engine died on me. So I was like, I learned something about tuning this engine today. So I re-riched it up, went richer and richer and richer until I could blip it from, you know, just above idle where the prop starts spinning. And then left it at that mixture setting, and this engine's been running great ever since. So anyway, that's the story. The biggest thing to take away from it is A, these paramotor engines are not reliable at all, but B, as long as you're flying with the first rule of paramotoring in mind, really not that big of a deal. So anyway, I'm going to continue on with this nice morning flight out to the beach here, and we'll go back to the regularly scheduled activities of Joel's mini fly-in, and we'll talk to you guys next time.